One thing people overlook as we build up to the NFL season is the impact of the training camp battles that we've endured throughout training camp and preseason, watching these young players earn a spot on the roster, earn some opportunity in the starting lineup or in the games, and how that could impact fantasy football. And we don't know what's it going to look like till we're into week 1, till we're into week 5. We read the reports, we read the news on these players, we watch them in these games, we watch the training camp highlights, we watch the clips, we see them doing good, but we do not know how they're going to be used, how many targets they're going to get, how many snaps they're going to play, if they're going to get many handoffs, many carries. We don't know until we're in live fire in week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it takes a few games for us to really find out. And that is a big conundrum for a lot of these players who are drafting in double-digit rounds, the waiver wire dandies, these guys that we're looking at. And one depth chart we've been looking at all off season long, definitely in training camp and mini camp, is the Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver depth chart. We've had a lot of young wide receivers battling it out day after day after day. They take turns posting the highlight of the day, the catch of the day. But one wide receiver has been getting some buzz, and it's been kind of quiet right now. And you need to know about him as you head to your holiday weekend drafts, or just know that he could potentially be going off. And you need to know whether it's true or not. And it's Skyy Moore. But before we dig into the stats, before we do this deep dive, you have to click that subscribe button right now. Click it with your mouse. Tap it with the finger on your phone. Stop missing out on this information to help you build your fantasy teams, help you get guys off the waiver wire, give you knowledge of these players, help you in the offseason with dynasty, rookie drafts, the NFL draft. I'm here for you every day. Stop missing out. Hit that subscribe button. But let's dig in here. So here's the news. This came out from Chiefs beat writer Jesse Knoll, or however you say his name. Probably butchered it. But Rashee Rice, Justin Ross would start out as package players. So situation dependent, in and out of each other of the lineup, and just taking turns pretty much. Hot hand probably is what they're going to be riding with. The hope is they produce enough to graduate and become every down wide receivers later in the season. Right now, Skyy Moore is the one of those every down guys. Veach expects a big jump from Skyy this year. So he expects a big jump. That doesn't mean he will get a big jump, but this obviously is an insider look that he should be or could be or talked about being able to get more snaps, more opportunity, more routes ran, more targets his way. To what degree, we don't know. That's why we're talking about that in the intro. Like some of these players, we watch the training camp battles and everything out. They win out, but really, they're only getting X amount of snaps, X amount of targets, and we need more than that to be fantasy relevant. Skyy Moore, though, is getting his opportunity. He's getting his shots. Maybe he gets enough to blow up. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's volatile. But this is good news for him. This is good news for anybody who's drafted him, who's been in on the Skyy Moore train, because it looks like he's getting his opportunity. Going to looking at him, though, he's a second-round pick in the 2022 draft class. Small school prospect. A G5 school, group of 5. Western Michigan was productive there. Profiles as like a slot plus, a slot receiver that you can do a little bit more with. You put him in the slot, run some routes. You can get him to go downfield a little bit. You can put him on the outside a little bit. Ultimately, he's going to be making his living in the slots. Almost 23 years old, still young, but kind of like an older young player, older for being in his second year. But as long as you're productive in redraft, it doesn't matter. As long as you're on the field doing some things, it doesn't really matter. And Dynasty, something you want to look at. But still, Skyy Moore has been a prospect that a lot of people has been paying attention to over the last year and a half, 2 years or so. And the Golden Tate comparison, when you look at the analytics, is kind of sticky because they're both very nuanced in the slot, both explosive, but Golden Tate was a little different. I'll give you that. 4.41 40-yard dash, ranks in the 90th percentile. Speed score's a little light because he's a little light, so you got to keep that in mind. But he's got the speed to get the job done. That's all that tells us. He's got the speed to get the job done. More than fast enough to stretch the field a little bit. Burst score's okay. Not the greatest, but it gets the job done. Good enough. Dominator rating. So that's the market share of the offense. 91st percentile. Highly productive. College target share. 39.5%, 99th percentile, breakout age, 20 years old, good enough to get the job done. So again, the production metrics and good athletic metrics. This guy is a prospect everybody was looking at. Then he falls in the second round and he goes to the Chiefs, one of the most nuclear offenses in all of NFL history. Really, all of NFL history. So this is a player you need to be paying attention to. You need to be paying attention to all the wide receivers on the depth chart, not just him. And then looking at this, looking at his college stats, really did well in 2021. His final year there at Western Michigan, 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns. His ADOT, though, average depth of targets, 13.5. His freshman season, 10.6. His final year there in 2021, 11.4 average depth of target on his career. That means he can get downfield and make plays happen. He can be used to stretch the field. That's a good thing. A lot of college prospects who are tremendous deep threats, they have ADOTs 13, 14, 15 range because the college game's a little different. Yards per route run, pretty decent, 2.93 on his career, 3.46 though in his best season. So very solid, efficient player, and he can get you some yards after the catch. So a decent guy. He's not a Justin Jefferson or anything like that. He's not super explosive. He's not some guy who's just going to straight up burn you, but he is very nuanced. He can break off routes, technical, good for the slot, and he's got that juice to give you a little bit more. And the thing about this offense is you look at the depth chart here at the wide receiver spot, and it's very ambiguous. It's very ambiguous. Kadarius Toney, he's in and out of lineup all the time with injuries. No one's going to debate you on that. Justin Watson has always been kicking around. He's always been kicking around. That might be a surprising name that we hear throughout the season, maybe, because he's always kicking around. High-end athleticism. Marcus Valdes-Scantling's there. Justin Ross has been the underdog dandy we've been watching. I would not be surprised if he jumps up. But Skyy Moore is going to get the slot snaps. Skyy Moore is going to be getting that opportunity to do things in the slots. And that's a good thing because Juju Smith-Schuster's gone. And Juju Smith-Schuster ran 238 snaps in the slot. And he had almost 900 yards last year. And that could end up going to Skyy Moore if he's getting those slot snaps because he pegs as a guy who should be living in the slot. And that should allow him to get some volume. The thing about this team, and you think about Patrick Mahomes, is he might be the Bill Belichick of quarterbacks, where he's so good that he just wheels it and deals it, and as long as someone's open, he's going to target them. And that being said, it could be just a Juju Smith-Schuster game, Marcus Valdes-Scantling game, Skyy Moore game, Justin Watson game, kind of like what we saw last year. I'm kind of referencing those players. But it could be a Justin Ross game, a Richie James game, Marcus Valdes-Scantling game. It could be something like that. And it could just pop off here and there. But again, though, they drafted Skyy Moore in the second round for a reason. They needed a slot receiver. They used Juju in the slot a little bit. Juju took over a little bit. Skyy Moore's from a G5 school, so he needed a little extra time to cook, to a little extra time to develop, a little extra time to get better. So Skyy Moore's into his second year. Usually these young players, second year is when they really start hitting. Even if they were good during their rookie season, that second year, they take it a step up. So maybe Skyy Moore gets an opportunity. But he's still a lottery ticket. He's still a guy you're gambling on, even though he's in this good offense. ADP and underdog right now is pretty high because a lot of people are into him, and a lot of people who are degenerate drafters throughout the offseason are stacking the Chiefs, and that's a big thing on underdog. I look for home league drafts over the weekend because ADP is really not real because the drafting has just recently happened. It's at home. It's not on all these sites. A lot of sites have mock draft ADP. So really you're just using it as a gauge. I like to use Underdog Fantasy as a gauge because it's kind of sticky but kind of not. So I can look at it and be like, yeah, I can see that player falling a little bit more in home league drafts. I can see Skyy Moore being a little bit cheaper in home league drafts. The part about him and where he's going in the draft is the wide receiver pool is starting to drain quick in this area of the draft. You are also getting wide receivers who have upsides and look like they can be consistent, but also have their red flags, and you can't disagree with that. Michael Thomas injury history. Skyy Moore hasn't done anything yet. Elijah Moore Had an off season last year going to the Browns. We would need to see what the targets and snap share looks like, even though we like him a lot. Quentin Johnston, he's got some competition. Rookie wide receiver. Cortland Sutton's been dealing with injuries his whole career. Treylon Burks come back from an injury. Rashad Bateman come back from an injury. Kadarius Toney come back from an injury. Romeo Doubs got more competition. Might be a slower paced offense. You got guys here where you can see them. They could be consistent. They could give you boom production. But you could also see those red flags. That's just something you got to pay attention to when you're looking at these wide receivers on the back end. That being said, when we strategize our drafts, we want to be strong at the wide receiver position. I mean, just feeling good at wide receiver before we get out around 5. I'm not saying draft all wide receivers. I'm not saying ignore any positions. I'm not saying ignore running back. I'm saying feel good about the wide receiver position. You either want 2 good anchors, you want 3 good ones. However the market gives you, however the market plays you, whatever hands you get, you need to take advantage of them. So if they give you values at running back, you understand, but you still got to come out good at wide receiver. That might mean you come out with 2 very good wide receivers instead of 3 if the market gives you running backs. If the market doesn't give you running backs, you might be coming out with 3 or 4. Really depends. You just play your draft how it comes to you. That's the best way, but you need to be cognizant of the market. You hear these strategies, here RB, 0 RB. Really, you just need to know what the market's doing, and then you strategize what if to this and that, depending on what's going on with the draft, and then you play it like that going forward. And usually the market will dictate kind of like a hero RB-ish type strategy, especially this year, because it's showing the volume of running backs compared to the volume of wide receivers and the risk factor there. So, and also like other positions, they're more for agility in that position, and the backups are easier to get off the waiver wire and stuff to plug and play for fantasy. So that's something you want to look at here. Going back to Skyy Moore, you need him because you want the Chiefs offense. We need to be buying these explosive offenses. This is one of them. Upside for days, potential stability, potential that he's a key cog in the offense, getting targets every week, potential he's giving you a flatline, stable production with some good weeks. That could potentially happen. You don't want him because you don't trust him because of last year. You might see volatility, which that's very well could happen. Patrick Mahomes could have a Justin Ross week. Could have a Kadarius Toney week. He could have a Travis Kelce week, which most weeks are. That could happen. There might be too many mouths to feed in this offense. They might be moving guys in and out because they do have a lot of good wide receivers who have upside, who can do things, who are good in different departments of the pass-catching game. So that could happen. But there's also some upside here because Skyy Moore's good. Skyy Moore's got a good quarterback and all that stuff. And the price is getting to the right cost, especially depending on where he goes in your home league draft. Set your price, set your markers, and see where you want him at. But also understand there's some fragility here. And he could be going up and down in the season, be boom bust. He could flatline. There is some risk here with Skyy Moore, and you got to be realistic. I like Skyy Moore. I like him. I want him on some of my teams. I want to draft him. But honestly, there is some risk here. Some people want to stay away from that. Also, this is a spot of the draft where you could be or should be pounding the running backs if you're coming out good at wide receiver and really shoring up the back end of your roster, that depth chart at the running back spot. So you might be just doing that instead because you got some hosses at wide receiver, and now the running backs are pretty juicy when you're looking at handcuffs, downside RB1s, guys with upside and all that stuff. So you might be doing that instead anyways. But Skyy Moore's on the Chiefs. Skyy Moore's going to get opportunity. We just got to see to what degree. So this might be a player you want to look at. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I want to hear about that. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on the way out. I'll catch you on the next video.